Hello, in this video I'm going to go over how damage works in the Elder Scrolls Online. I thought it would be a helpful topic to cover with the night market being out and a lot of concerns and issues with people having trouble with the damage in there. So I thought maybe I would do kind of a deep dive on how damage works, how you can mitigate it, and how it's beneficial. So this video is going to cover damage mitigation from the ground up, basically in a PvE focused, specifically kind of leaning into the night market area. Whether you're a tank or a solo player, understanding the system will change how you build and how you play. So let's get right into it. Why this matters for tanks, understanding mitigation is your primary job of first step, stay alive. If you're dead, then your group's probably going to have trouble because you're there to kind of keep the enemy's attention so that they're not smacking your healers and DPS, who are traditionally not built to absorb that kind of upfront and continuous attacks. So to optimize your tank builds is going to ease up the job of your healers a little bit more, and it also helps your group survive in harder content. If you're a solo player trying to do solo activities, be it overland, night market, soloing a dungeon, arena, whatnot, whatever the case may be, if you ignore mitigation entirely and you're trying to run a content on a build, you're probably going to struggle quite a bit because you're going to just get smacked around with a lot of stuff that's going to instantly kill you. Whereas you could possibly build a different way and negate that from happening. So I'm going to show you things that you can kind of lean into that are not going to sacrifice your damage as much, but just something to look at and make sure that you've got the box checked, basically. So the real world example, as I said, the night market is a zone that is basically turning a lot of players into Swiss cheese because they don't really have a defensive and optimally damaged build. So I'm just going to talk about damage overall, how it works on the game, and what you can do to mitigate it when you're encountering it. The long story short of it is this game is basically a very large math problem, and there are ways to achieve getting to the other side of the equal sign. You just have to understand how the system works and how you can take advantage of certain things in the game. And so we're going to go over just a basic explanation in case people are not aware. There are two essential damage types. There are martial and magic, and they are listed on the screen as you can see. Physical, poison, disease, and bleed damage are martial damages. Those affect your physical resistance. Magic damages are magical damage, I should say, are also magic damage, flame, frost, and shock. Those affect your spell resistance. Please keep in mind, in most cases, when you apply something like Major Resolve, they increase both your physical and spell resistance. However, you can have buffs that are implemented that only affect one or the other, such as the passive from Bretons, for example, only increases your spell resistance. So just pay attention to that. If you're taking physical damage or poison damage, but you've kind of stacked into spell resistance, that might be why you're having trouble. So just keep in mind of what type of damage you are receiving. When you look at your death recaps, that's always really important to check to see what's killing you. What type of damage are you taking? And that can kind of help you stack into something to help you uh, mitigate what's killing you and maybe improve your circumstances to where you're not going to get stomped into the mud, so to speak. So I'm going to go through order of operations in terms of what basically when you take a hit of damage, what things basically are in line to prevent that damage from hitting your health bar. So let's just pretend like there is a line of 5 people in front of you and they represent different types of mitigation, and you are the health bar at 6th person in line. So the first person up to the counter basically to get smacked in the face is damage shields. That's the first line of defense that gets chewed through. Most damage shields are not going to absorb absolutely everything. They're depending on what you're running on your build and what your class is and whatnot. They could be anywhere from a very massive shield like the 1 second Arcanist defensive ward skill that has the 1 second really large, and then it goes down to like somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000 after that. But if your shield gets chewed through and there's still damage to be handled, then physical and spell resistance is up next. There is a cap to this in the amount of 33,100, and that basically equates to 50% of mitigation is the most that you can gain from that. If you go over that in PvE, you're really not getting any benefit from that. There are some cases where you just go over and that it is what it is. You maybe are getting a benefit from a skill that is giving you armor, but it's also doing something else. So what the heck, use it. Um, Really good example for that is Runic Sunder taunt from the Arcanist Soldier of Apocrypha. It will give you, I believe, if memory serves, 2,200 armor because it strips that from the enemy and gives it to you. Um, However, that skill does a lot of things in and of itself. So that armor piece is just kind of uh, icing on the cake, so to speak. So just make sure that you are stacking into resistance really well, regardless if you're a tank or a solo player. This is a really helpful category to make sure you are paying attention to. Damage shields are always helpful because they can help you with a lot of different things, but resistances are really, really important as well. So moving into the next person in line, number 3 in line is mitigation buffs, your major and minor protection, things like that. They stack multiplicatively. So just if you're not sure what that means, it means every time you add another percentage mitigation buff in, it's not going to be as potent or beneficial as you think. For example, major and minor protection can absolutely be active at the same time. Major protection is 10% reduced damage taken, and then minor protection is 5%. However, it is not a true 15% if you have those active together. They are multiplicative. So if you use the 10% from major and the minor protection, you're not getting a full 15%. It's probably closer to uh, 12 or something like that. I don't have the exact math in front of me, but it's multiplicative. Everything that you stack in this category is multiplicative. So keep that in mind. So number 4 in the line is block mitigation. So anytime you are stacking into block mitigation, that is the next one. It comes after your shield has been depleted. So if you still have a shield up, then your block mitigation doesn't count. So there is a cap for block mitigation as well. We'll cover that here in just a little bit further on down. And then Ward Master is kind of a wonky, kind of off to the side thing that I want to highlight because that gives you a damage reduction while blocking and under a damage shield. So that is kind of a unique scenario there. And then if there's anything left after all of that, your health bar basically just eats it. So that goes a long way to say if you're a solo player or a tank, damage shields are really, really helpful because they are the first line of defense. So if you can buff that up, that makes it so that the rest of that stuff doesn't have to do as much work. So that's not to say that the rest of that stuff is useless, but because they are they do less of a job basically because they are handling percentages of what's left. So keep that in mind. Um, you can have multiple different shields stack on top of each other. However, if you just cast the same shield over and over, those will not stack. So keep that in mind. Blocking while you have a shield is a waste of stamina. If you got a shield still active and in place, you need to let off your block so that you can recuperate some stamina because you're depleting your stamina recovery by doing that. What you need your shield for is to help you recuperate stamina by taking your block off. You only need to block when your shield gets depleted, so keep that in mind. And then another thing, you can increase the power of your shields by slotting the Bastion CP that is in the red tree. Um, that increases your damage shield size by 15%. So that can be a really helpful CP to look into for solo play. If you're using a shield and you're running around solo, Bastion could be a really helpful tool. So pay attention to that. If you've got a shield of any kind, if you're on an Arcanist beam build that gives you a shield from the Pragmatic Fate Carver, for example, make sure you're looking at this Bastion CP node that's in the red tree. Very, very helpful. It can make your shield size larger. So just keep that in mind. So physical and spell resistances, as I said previously, there's a cap of 33,000 and depends on how you get there. You can use major and minor resolve. Major resolve is 5,948 and minor resolve is 2,974. Those stack. And then armor also stacks additively. So you have to pay attention to if you're using the fortification or fortified CP in the red tree, along with all of your armor values on what weights you are using. If you're using a reinforced trait of some kind, that stacks additively. As soon as you get to the 33,000 mitigation level, anything above that does not count. So you need to pay attention to that and make sure that maybe you're not stacking up too high. I know there are a couple of things that you can do to take advantage of something like tremor scale, for example, strips armor based on how much mitigation you have on your build, and there's not a cap on that. So if you go above the damage, or I should say the resistance cap, tremor scale can actually strip quite a bit of armor from an enemy. So keep that in mind. There are some niche things to look at in that regard. So there sometimes can be some benefit to going over the resistance cap. Just depends on what you're doing. But in most cases, I would say once you get to 33, look at putting something else in there because you'll get a larger benefit from that. So let's talk about block mitigation. There are several different things you can do to get your block mitigation up. The base that you start with is 50%, and then whatever you add toward the cap, there's a hard cap of 90%. So that last 40% is all multiplicative that you add in. So the values that you see on the tooltips, for example, the sword and board 20%, and then also the defensive stance from the sword and board skill. When you add those in together, they're going to be multiplicative. So the best way to check what your block mitigation is truly is get all your buffs on and then go into your advanced stats on your character screen and you can check what your block mitigation is there and it will show you. Just keep in mind if you have something where it goes up and over the 90 percentile. I've had a couple of builds. I believe I've gone into like 94%. Like if you use the mythic, the uh, the Aegis belt. I'm blanking on the name here. If you use that mythic, then you can oftentimes go into the over the limit on the block mitigation because the mythic can do that for you. So just keep in mind that block mitigation has a cap, and Searbane's Ward, that's the one I was trying to remember. The Searbane's Ward mythic can give you a lot of damage mitigation, but the drawback of that is you can't move while you're using it, and you're bracing, I should say. It will give you 30% damage mitigation, or block mitigation, I should say. And so that can really get your block mitigation high, but you can't move while you're blocking. So it's a really niche thing, but you can get the tooltip to say higher than 90. I believe I used it and it would say 94, but that extra 4% you're not getting any benefit from. So If there's something that you can stack into otherwise, then I would do that. For example, the sturdy gear trait, the amount of block mitigation you get from that, you may not be getting a benefit of that. It's 4% per piece in terms of looking at each piece, but when you actually put that, for example, you could put a piece of divines on and then put a piece of sturdy on that same gear piece and check your tooltip, you will see that that 4% that's listed there is not actually what gets added to the table. So just pay attention to those things that you're stacking in, because as I said, it's multiplicative, it's not additive like you think. Okay, so as I said earlier, major and minor protection are multiplicative. They don't add a true 15%. It's more of a diminished value for every time you add into this. So just pay attention to that when you're adding into a specific category. Damage reduction and is one category. Block mitigation is another. Physical and spell resistance or armor are all one category. Um, those types of things. And then there's also some champion point passives to look at. There are uh, passives of Hardy, which handles the martial damage, and then Elemental Aegis. This handles magical damage types. Now, these are only 2%. They're probably not even that when you type in to everything, but they are free, or I should say they're passives. They're always on. They're not slottable. So I would recommend taking them because every little bit helps. Slottable damage mitigations. Um, the preparation is not slottable. That's a passive as well. So Ironclad, this is direct damage. And if you're not aware what direct damage is, that's damage that hits you instantly and it's done. And it's just one hit of damage instantly for a certain amount. That's direct damage. Damage over time is damage that ticks on you. For example, the Enduring Resolve. If you look at the top right square there, damage over time sticks on you and ticks several times for a period of time. So those are two different damage types. And then we have where does damage hit? Is it single target or is it area of effect? Area of effect is, does an enemy lay a fire pool on the ground, or do they hit you with something directly? That's a single target. It's not hitting the group behind you or in the area. It's just hitting you. Like if they heavy attack you, that's a single target direct damage. So you could stack both Duelist and Ironclad, but they will be uh, multiplicative. They are not additive. So just pay attention to that. Um, Ward Master, as I said, will give you block reduction under a damage shield, which is kind of a unique scenario because you're not supposed to typically block while you have a shield up. That's the kind of point of shielding in and of itself. If you have crowd control, that's a little bit more of an advanced thing. I would say if you're still learning to tank or new to the game, I would not focus on crowd control immunity. That's kind of um, more advanced. However, I will say there is a lot of snaring going on in the night market, so this could possibly be something that you want to look at doing. Not a whole not solid on that, but might be something to look at. Also, Payne's Refuge. Now these are all in the red tree, the Ward Master, Juggernaut, and Payne's Refuge are all in the red tree. Preparation, Ironclad, Duelist Rebuff, Unassailable, and Enduring Resolve are in the blue tree. And so we have champion points blocking mitigation. You can either use Bracing Anchor, which is in the red tree, that will give you 20% block mitigation. That is a multiplicative addition. And then the trade-off is you have reduced movement speed. So probably not a great thing to put on a solo build because you need to be able to move around out of mechanics. And they're pretty much going to chase you, so you need the movement speed. So this is more of a tanking CP. And then On Guard is block mitigation, and it only is active while you are under crowd control immunity. So I would say probably in solo instances, you probably don't want to use that as well. But Fortified and Bastion are really, really strong for solo content, as I said. Fortified gives you 1,731 armor, and then it also you have Bastion that increases your uh, damage shields by 15%. So that goes a long way to get to this slide here of what should you stack into under certain scenarios. So for both, let's do tanks first. Resistance cap, absolutely 100% of the time you should try to get to that, especially if you're doing uh, advanced stuff like veteran trials, DLC trials for sure. Um, if you're going to do any hard mode dungeons, you definitely want to be at the resistance cap. Max out your block mitigation. I cannot tell you how much this is helpful, especially if you're going to do hard mode stuff. The damage that is in the hard modes for trials and dungeons, if you're not at the 90% block mitigation cap, you're going to have trouble. That is a definite, absolute definite thing that you should look into and focus. Um, Also, paying attention to your damage types that you're slotting, and then overall what you're basically benefiting from, uh, if in terms of how you're stacking into it, keeping in mind that if you stack too much into one category, you may not be getting as much of a benefit in there. So, for example, if you're on a Necromancer tank using the Bone Tyrant skill, and you've got that passive for reducing damage taken from damage over time, the CP slottable that we covered earlier here for Enduring Resolve may not be as effective because you've got that 15% damage reduction in there. So keep that in mind that you may not be getting a benefit from that. In the end, it might be only like a 2% benefit. Who knows? Depends on your build. So Ward Master, if you're using shields and you're going to block, this might help. I would probably recommend putting your CP slottables somewhere else. But I did want to mention it as a possibility. For solo players, resistances and shields are your best friend. Absolutely pay attention to your resistances, number one, because that's always there and it's always on. Regardless if you're blocking, regardless if you have a shield up, resistance is your number one thing that you should be looking at. If you go into your build for your solo content and you have, let's say, 14,000 resistances, I can tell you you're probably going to have some trouble in the night market or in veteran Vatishran Hollows or things like that. Or if you're even going into Black Rose Prison, I would highly recommend that you don't unless you've got a really good healer. Um, Resistances probably should be up and over 20,000 at least. Make sure you've got Major Resolve on. There are a couple of skill lines that are really good with that being provided, namely with the Dragon Knight rework. Uh, Earthen Heart and Earthen Heart is a really good skill to look at because of the rework that they did. The Dragon Knight skill does damage as well as giving an increase of damage done and giving you major resolve, very similar to Hurricane from the Sorcerer's Storm Calling, where it does damage, gives you a major resolve buff as well as a movement buff of minor expedition. So keep in mind, you probably want to make sure you've got stuff like that on your kit. If you don't, that's probably one of the number one reasons you might be having trouble. Um, the preparation CP that is passive, you definitely want to make sure you filled that in and don't forget that. Depending on what type of damage you're taking, you may want to sacrifice one of your offensive slottables and put on Ironclad or Enduring Resolve. Depends on what type of damage you're facing. But damage shields are probably a really, really good thing to focus on. And so take advantage of that red tree Bastion CP, and knowing what type of damage you're encountering is going to help you figure out where you need to stack up on your resistances and your defense. So keep that in mind. So the full picture here, Your damage shields are your first line of defense, then your resistances. And then you have percentage mitigation buffs that stack multiplicatively, and then you have block mitigation, and then it's pretty much your health bar after that. So knowing when these things go into effect and what you should stack up into can help you mitigate this stuff a lot more. So keep that in mind. I just wanted to do a quick video on this to cover those types in case that would be helpful. Before I close out the video, I'm going to go over my YouTube channel here and talk about my music list that I have on the channel in case people have not seen that. I'm going to go over how to get to this. So as you can see, I'm on my YouTube channel here. I'll just go to the home. So this is what you see when you get on my YouTube channel. There's two ways to get to my playlists. You can either select the playlist tab there, or you can scroll down to the created playlists here. Once you get to this list right here, this is where I have all of my content separated out. And I want to highlight two folders here, the shorts one and the songs of Tamriel. This has all of my songs that I've created for the video game that has kind of like an MTV music video for these. I've spent a lot of time and effort writing the songs, creating imagery for that. I'll just give you a little sneak peek of what's to come in the next couple of weeks. I release a song once a week, and I've got quite a few of these coming out here in the future. So there's just a quick little idea of what's coming there. But I thought maybe I would close out the video with a song that is coming out this Friday. I will play the short. So if you're watching this video is going to come out on Tuesday, the 12th of May. And this song that I'm going to play is coming out this Friday. So I'm going to give you an advanced listen on the short here. This is called No Second Chances in the Dark. And this is about the Wayrest Sewers dungeons and the Pelengir family. So I'm just going to play the short here just to give you a snippet of what that song sounds like. If that interests you, please keep an eye on my channel. Make sure you've got your notification bells on. This will be coming out, as I said, this Friday. So we'll play this video and we'll close the video out. I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching and have a great day.
No second chances in the dark. Once the lich is left his mark.